So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Welcome to Enhance International Group's 12th in a series of webinars on building and evolving resilient enterprise. Thank you for taking the time to attend, especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic restrictions. We hope that you and your family are healthy and safe. My name is Jim Vries, founder of Enhance International Group, a group of over 40 consultants, consulting companies, and software as a service providers dedicated to empowering the clients' workforces by focusing on their passionate areas of expertise. So we hope you can find this information useful in today's webinar. Please feel free to follow up and ask questions during the webinar as well as afterwards. Since March, we've had a number of webinars on risk appetite, risk resiliency, agility, supply chain risk management. We have our own COVID-19 respond, recover, renew process that we'll cover today. We've covered the building blocks to create an agile framework, and we've looked at some growth portfolio processes. We've also addressed artificial intelligence and how it can be used to create a resilient enterprise. And we've had a webinar on digital ecosystem. And then just recently, we had a webinar last week on empowering employees through rapid skills deployment. Our next webinars will be focused on looking at the resilient product ideation in a post-COVID virtual world. And we'll also be going back to artificial intelligence and looking at OCR, optical character recognition, and video ethnography. And then again, more on digital technology and more on rapid skills development. So a lot to come. So we look forward to seeing you soon on those webinars. Our past webinars are available on our EIG website. They're free. You can download them at any time. So today's webinar is on launching resilient products in a post-COVID world. And we focus on the fact that, as we all know, 80% of new products fail, according to Clayton Christensen, who wrote a famous book a while back. And there's a significant number of products that fail every year. Up to 30,000 consumer products are launched every year. And Shark Tank can't even save all these products. So there's a lot to talk about today. So we'll get moving on it. And we're going to be covering process data and technology. So linking everything together so we'll get that exponential impact to your bottom line. So today, we're very fortunate to have two highly respected leaders in new product development and innovation space, with well over 20 years of experience for each of them, Dr. Mark Sneeringer and Dr. Phil Samuel. So Mark, a few words of introduction, please.
Sure. I'm Mark Sneeringer. I've been involved in process improvements since being part of GE's initial launch of Six Sigma in the mid-90s. My last corporate position was I was the continuous improvement leader for Philips Healthcare Division, and I've been in the consulting world now for about 5 years.
And Phil?
I'm Phil Samuel from Lean Methods Group. I've spent most of my career focusing on innovation, product development, and strategy, starting with aerospace companies, and I have been fortunate to implement many of the approaches we discuss among small companies to very large companies around the world.
Great. Thanks for that introduction. And we'll get started here. And again, if everyone could go to this website and log in so you can participate in the polling questions, pollev.com, Greg Schlegel 910. So we'll just kick it off here with the agenda today. We're going to kick it off with exploring the evolution of product and service development. And then we'll get into responding to the COVID world and its impact to new product introduction and development. Then we'll get into the proven benefits of the phase gate process, design for Six Sigma, ideation, and agility. All these things and more have been making a big impact on this overall phase gate process for the last 15, 20 years. The complexion has changed dramatically. And then we'll look at what's disrupting all processes, and that's digital capabilities that can be used in this phase gate process, and how can we reinvent the phase gate process for agility, speed, and scale for the future. So with that, Mark?
Sure. So we've tried to capture on this slide probably a little bit too simplistically, but how product innovation has developed over the last 100 plus years. So we start with the early companies were generally the brainchild of a single inventive genius. And the products they turned out were driven by that person's creativity and their understanding of the market, perhaps maybe a limited understanding. As companies got larger and products got more complex, this morphed into an engineer-dominated model, which was driven by what technology was available. Products were pushed out to the market because they were technically interesting, not because they were necessarily needed by the consumers or by the customers. Timing of those introductions was defined by the development cycle and not by customer expectations. So those customer expectations started to become more dominant in what we're calling the market-driven era that followed. So things like voice of the customer was captured, and products were designed to meet unmet needs. As information became more easily available with the growth of the internet, speed to market has become the dominant force in the last 20 years. The goal of successful products during this time frame is not just to meet customer needs, but sometimes to amaze and delight them with features that they hadn't been expecting. This speed drives a need for efficient and effective development processes, including the ability to deal with poorly defined requirements. So that brings us to today and where we think things are headed. And where we think that is widespread customization, providing products personalized to the individual customer. So in order to do this, supply chains are going to be hugely different. I mean, the end point of this may be think about the Star Trek replicator or the holodeck. And then the other thing about this is that the development is actually owned and driven by the customers themselves. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, 100-some years of where we think this has been developing.
As Mark showed, we've moved away from the single inventor to engineer-driven process. And then, since then, we made a remarkable progress in terms of a product development process. What you see here and the next slide are what we call the phase gate processes. The phase gate processes were introduced in the late 80s and in the early 90s to make product development a repeatable, scalable, and predictable process. As the name implies, the process is composed of phases and toll gates. Various industries and companies have adopted them for their specific needs. Mark, why don't you elaborate on some of the phase gate aspects for different industries?
Yeah, I mean, we're showing a bunch of different industries and examples of stage gates here, and they all have differences, and we're not going to describe those in detail, but they do have a few key points that show up in each one. There's a point where under the heading there of concept approval, where there's a proposal of what the product or service is what it's going to be has been documented. There's a point where the design is considered complete and additional changes are not entertained. We're calling that at the heading of design freeze. And then there's a point where the sales commence. This is where the release for sales and things start. So those sort of run across all these different industries. Jim?
Yeah, and What's interesting about the phase gate process is that a lot of the best practices have been leveraged across the enterprise for managing many large-scale projects. So it's really a great best practices way of managing large-scale projects.
Okay, so one of the key aspects, or the key aspect of these processes, is this gate between one phase and the next. And the goal of these events, these phase gate events or milestone reviews, is the development in this process is to make sure that the project is on track and is delivering the outputs that are expected at that point. There's some characteristics that make for a robust phase gate process. And the first one is that the deliverables at these gates are not just the technical design, but all aspects of the project, all aspects of the business. Another is that the reviewers are generally the leadership of the business, so that you've got all the functions represented at the highest possible level. It's key to remember that a project can be stopped or sent back. If the deliverables aren't being met, or the results show that the product or service isn't viable. I mean, I've seen plenty of situations where something just gets stopped because we say, hey, this isn't what we really wanted to do. Just so a phase gate is definitely not just a rubber stamp. And then the resources and the timelines for the next phase are what get planned and approved at these gates. And so this defines what work needs to be done, and it also provides a sense of urgency that might be missing if only the full project timing or the budget were considered. Good project teams, what I found is they develop a gate mentality, meaning they focus on these near-term deliverables. And the thing about that is, if you hit all of those on time and on spec, you're going to deliver the product or the service on time and on spec. So another aspect of this is that if by bringing in all these functions together, all these issues, an issue you end up with is that these reviews can get to be a huge undertaking. So what exemplar companies do is they address this by having a set of nested reviews leading up to the phase gate. So these sessions are function specific and involve subject matter experts beyond the team reviewing the aspects like design, marketing, manufacturing, that sort of thing. So that way, the outcomes of this, or the items that need to be escalated, are what show up in the actual gate review, not the whole huge amount of information. So the Philips Sonicare FlexCare toothbrush is actually a good example of a product delivered through an effective phase gate process. This was a major platform change for the business, and it's led to what most of the Sonicare brushes that you see in the market today. So some key features of this process were that the market requirements were defined and validated through customer inputs. The new functionality was proven feasible before the product development project was even launched. There's a function development project that went on ahead of the product development. And then the actual project proved the process capability. And the result of this was a product that became the market value leader within a year of its launch.
Responding to a changing COVID world and what impact it has on new product and service development. So this is a slide that you might have seen in previous webinars with EIG. So the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium has developed this model, which is characterized by the W and 3 R's. And so the 3 R's are respond, recover, and renew. And the model illustrates the supply-demand imbalances that have occurred since the onset of COVID at the beginning of this year. The exemplars have been able to navigate through these 3 R's of respond, recover, and renew. However, many companies are still struggling to define their products and services to meet this current demand, because the demand is changing and the new normal hasn't been quite defined yet. So If you're in a high growth sector, like a lot of digital companies are, like Google, Apple, Tesla, Huawei, Microsoft, Amazon, Zoom, they've certainly benefited from this and capitalized on this growth. But if you're not like them, the question is, what do you do differently, and how do you know where that new normal is, and which products do you focus on and which ones do you scale back in your current portfolio? So there's the exemplars in the high-tech industry and pharma, biomedical, and CPG that are moving fast to meet demand again, and there's other companies that are not able to hit that demand. And so there's this oscillating up and down depending on industry until the new normal is achieved, through trial and error. So there's a lot of shake-up going on out there, and generally in a catastrophic event, you're talking about 20% of the companies are going to lose or go out of business. And with something as big as COVID, we don't really know what that percentage of companies are going to be hit by this COVID. So it's very important to be on top of this, on top of how you're going to manage this. Phil?
Every organization has an opportunity to respond to the changes in the environment with new or redesigned product and services, or by adding new features to existing products and services. COVID-19 is no exception in this regard. The new normal has brought upon companies with several challenges. Of course, we can look at every challenge as an opportunity and respond to it. Here are some examples. First, there is a quantum shift in customer needs and expectations. As examples include virtual access to product and services, acceleration of digital capabilities, and a new category customers are demanding called isolation products. So first, one of the challenges companies must deal with is the opportunity brought out with the quantum shift in customer needs. There are also new challenges in terms of teamwork and collaboration among the product development team. We quickly became well adapted to virtual collaborations using tools such as Idea Flip, Miro, and many more, and platforms such as Microsoft Teams, Zoom, etc. So new product development teams had to adopt their processes to these new realities. Product development teams found themselves having to reinvent, conducting ethnography, building prototypes, and conducting experiments from remote locations. A third challenge that's brought upon in the product development context is the supply chain disruptions. So now the product development teams were asked to reevaluate their sourcing strategy for their products. So all of these are examples of the impact of COVID-19 on product and service development. This slide is a reminder that new products, new services, and new business models are always derived from the strategy that feeds the enterprise's execution engine. So how often should we refresh the strategy? Well, we should refresh the strategy every time there are significant changes in the environment, just like we described in the last slide. As a result, every organization must re-examine their products and their services and their business model strategy, and examine the pipelines associated with it in the context of the changes brought upon by COVID-19. A famous quote from Albert Einstein is, "Life is like a bicycle. To keep your balance, you need to keep moving." And that's very apt for this context.
So again, we have the poll. So hopefully everybody is on pollev.com. And Phil?
So here we have listed a bunch of challenges organizations face in terms of product development. So we would like you to go to the poll EV and organize them, rank these lists in terms of what you believe are your most important challenges. You can click on the item and then there is arrow button going up or down. You're able to move something up or down as you please. And then when you're done, scroll down to the bottom and hit submit response. As expected, one of the biggest complaints is how long it takes to develop new products. So you can see this actually reflected in the trend, the S curve getting shorter. As a result, it puts pressure on the companies to create new product and services at the lightning speed. The scope creep and unexpected issues are also what derails the product development. So these make total sense.
Interestingly enough, it hasn't changed much in 20 years.
I think that those will continue to be an important point even going forward. That, you know, when we do it in 1 year, people want it in 8 months. When we do it in 8 months, people want the product development in 6 months.
And as Mark reflected at the beginning, as product life cycle gets shorter and shorter, and we turn into do-it-yourself environment where people are making their own products,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to continue to escalate until people can make their own products with a 3D printer, anything that they want, any design they want. So they will be the limiting factor and not R&D.
Which puts pressure on the companies to make that process more reliable, more repeatable, more scalable. So
pretty interesting. So time and money.
Time and money. All right, we are now going to talk about the proven benefits of applying this phase gate process and integrating with other aspects such as design for excellence, ideation, agility, etc. We want to look them through the angle of visibility and also from the angle of managing risks in the product development. So if you look at the risks associated with product development, we put them into 4 layers. The first layer is associated with the customers. Our ability to create products and deliver them, satisfying the customers in terms of its performance, its delivery, its cost. All of those are first set of challenge. How can we create products that satisfies the customer's needs? The second layer originates from our ability to take our design and create the product and services, and then we can successfully deliver them to the customers in an effective way. So items like production, quality, yield, delivery, all comes into play as risk elements that must be managed. The third layer actually goes into the design layer, the design process itself. So can we take the customer's needs and turn them into designs? And there are elements of risk that comes from design itself, the scope itself, managing the project, getting it done on time, all of those issues that you highlighted in the survey in the previous slide. The fourth level of risk originates in the big picture we call the management layer, and lots of it is external. The risks that come from market in terms of competition, changes, just like we are seeing with COVID-19. Our management, suppliers, support structure, all of these affect, in fact, these items in this list affect other items in the other three layers as illustrated by the arrows.
Okay, so as you take what Phil's just talked about and bring it into a project, sort of the mechanics of this, risk management is a critical part of that development process. So the goal of the risk management is to understand what could go wrong in the project or the product, judge the probability of that event occurring and the impact of it if it does, and then take action to reduce that risk. There's a couple ways of doing this for the project. There's a risk management process for the product itself. There's failure modes effects analysis. Both have, you're looking at this probability and the impact. And this first risk assessment that you should be doing is done early in the project, and then you want to be updating it at each one of the phase gates. So the reviewers are checking whether or not there's a rational plan, there's a rational assessment, and if there's follow through on the mitigation. So the risk should be retired as the project moves from phase to phase, with the ones with the highest probability and the highest impact being addressed first, so that by the time you get to the the later stages, you're down to some fairly minor things, and you've dealt with a lot of those issues that Phil talked about on the previous slide.
The best-in-class process for a new product or new service development enables project de-risking by utilizing a comprehensive framework that involves at least 4 elements. The first element is that the new product concepts that we bring to the market are customer driven, and they are also backed by the most impactful yet feasible technologies. The second element is utilizing a balanced scorecard framework to provide visibility at all decision levels across financial, customer, process, human talent, and enabling systems. Third, we utilize a design for excellence techniques and tools so that our designs are predictable, they are robust, and they are reliable. Fourth, we embrace an agile mindset to drive collaboration, speed, and scale. Risk management and clear visibility to project information are key enablers of robust product development as companies move into the uncertain environment brought on by the current pandemic.
So that was a great overview on the proven benefits of some very fundamental basics of phase gates, design for Six Sigma, ideation, and agile. Next, we'll look at leveraging digital capabilities to automate these best practices. What can we do with all this new digital hype that's out there to help us get faster and better at making decisions? So from a new product introduction and development perspective, we have over the years developed a lot of really good best practices on tracking a large scale project, such as, and Mark and Phil covered those, the market requirements, the product requirements, quality, failure modes and effect analysis, as Mark mentioned. All these things are fantastic things, but what happens often is all this information kind of gets lost in the weeds, and we don't necessarily leverage the best practices like we'd like to across projects, across time, as time goes on. So the data is in many different locations in the company, and it's not centralized. And so we tend to end up making the same mistakes over and over again, or we're reliant on subject matter experts or a very good, strong project manager to make sure we cross all our T's and dot our I's. So with digitization and digital transformation, we can take all of this information from all these sources and put them into a data lake in real time, activity-based. We can start using things like process mining, business intelligence and analytics, not just reporting, but predicting. We can use robotics process automation to automate the way of tracking and collecting this data. We can build user-friendly interfaces for the engineers and the scientists using intelligent process automation, so they don't have to enter in to 5 different systems all their information. We can use ethnography and edge sensor technology to track what people are doing, so that they don't need to worry about tracking their time and tracking the different activities. It will be automatically tracked. And then artificial intelligence can be used to help us with low-code programming, which is low-code programming is simply being able to code, anybody code, versus the high-code programming where you need a degree to code. So it's getting simpler to code and to understand how to manage our processes. Machine learning is becoming an everyday word phrase that we use, and we're embarking upon the time when deep learning and natural language programming and computer vision are going to be everyday occurrences in everything that we do in our jobs. So when we can assimilate all that data that we currently have today, and then we can expand the automated data collection on things that we would like to collect but we don't collect today, we'll get to this world of this real-time informed decision environment, which will give the scientists and the engineers more time to create and be innovative, and shortening that cycle, the design cycle, and reducing risk. So next I want to show you a couple tools and that are out there, and Mark mentioned the de-risking part that's so vital in a large-scale project. And there are tools out there, and this is one of them. It's from the AIM Institute, one of EIG's partners, and they call it Minesweeping, and it's for project de-risking for large-scale projects. So when we talk about risk, we talk about certainty and impact. So on this y-axis, we have greater certainty as we move up the axis, the y-axis, and impact as we move across the row. And as we move, for each and every risk that we've identified, Mark mentioned some, we could say, it could be tear resistance on boxes, it could be anything that is the risk of not being able to understand what the desired solutions are for your particular new project or new product that you're producing. You assign it in one of these boxes, and as Mark said before, it's the same process, except it's now in the cloud. It's easy to obtain, everybody can see it, and you're identifying those landmines, and you're slowly working to reduce those over time. So again, this is another screen where you're tracking all your assumptions and your risk. You're identifying your known unknowns, unknown unknowns, and known unknowns. So all those things are going to be tracked in here and evaluated. And as we move forward, we're going to move from uncertainty to certainty with all our risk. And this is very similar to the graph that Mark showed a little earlier over time. But now this is all automated on a platform, very easy to use. Everybody on the team can see what the risks are and be working to reduce those over time. So the next technology out there is process mining. So this is an event-driven software that's out there. It's been out there for 15 years. It's not new, but it's really taking the world by storm now. And Celonis is one of EIG's partners also, and they provide this process mining capability. And they have more applications out there than anyone by far. And they have a global reach. And so the goal of process mining is to provide a transparency to the process so that bottlenecks can be clearly identified and improvements can be quickly made and verified. So it's like you're drawing a process map like we would do manually, but now the data, it's actually, the process map is being created by the data itself. So very powerful. So with these identified improvements being quickly made and verified, we can collaborate those workflow processes and try to operate these without friction. So Celonis says a frictionless process. So traditionally, we use ERPs, we use Excel, as we mentioned before. Any database that's out there could be a Fracas database for failure tracking. It's anything that you have out there. It could be Primavera, tracking your overall project. And the cool thing is, and yeah, I did say cool, it can be cool, is that all this data can be quickly assembled into a data lake, that digital twin we mentioned before, and reported out to discover our bottlenecks, delays, and cost overruns. And those were the two things that you guys mentioned are at the top of your list. And then you can set up alerts and triggers, and you can also start using robotic process automation to fix some of those processes. But really, you want to be fixing the processes. You don't want to be automating broken processes. So let's see how we can get started. So it's fairly simple. You need an activity log that's in any system, which is the case ID, the product name, let's say, a timestamp, and the activity. Let's take the phase gate processes as an example. Then we can contextualize that activity by, it's the design review, the activity lead, Fred, the product line, when did you plan to start it? When did you actually start it? What was your last planned completion date? What's your planned original FTE? Again, this is all these cost overruns that we always are looking at in a project plan. So all of these things can be tracked. It's pretty much limitless on what you can track. And then you can track multiple projects over time to see how you're performing relative to other projects and help you identify how well you're actually performing relative to plan and how it relates to the risks that we just discussed before. So again, process mining leverages this event-based data across all of our systems and identifies those risk areas and makes it visual. So this is what we would normally draw in a process map. Here we have it, idea to monitor, process map from the data, and all the cycle times, the cost, anything that you want to track, time and money, can be tracked automatically through the system by each and every event. And then after that, it has a reporting tool and has a dashboard. You can customize the dashboard to meet your needs. You can bring in other data to further contextualize it, or you can bring it up to your Power BI dashboard and feed it with the information that you're looking for. So the sky's the limit really on creating this visibility. Very exciting.
So we've discussed The phase gate process, we discussed managing risks, and also now the implication of digital capabilities and how that can enable us to create visibility and predictability. So the question is now, is phase gate process enough? Can it satisfy all the needs? Let's take a look at these 4 uncertainties. In fact, for every new product and service and business model innovations to succeed, these are foundational uncertainties. We already know that in innovations in general have a bad track record. As Jim mentioned earlier, about 80 to 90% of the innovations fail. Most of these failures can be tracked to at least one of these 4 uncertainties. The first uncertainty is about measuring true solution neutral customer needs that are underserved or overserved. These solution neutral customer needs are called jobs to be done. So every innovator must ask the question, what jobs are customers struggling to get done? And how much are they willing to pay to get that job done better? The second uncertainty pertains to finding the best feasible idea. What are the most impactful yet feasible ideas that will solve customer challenges? Have we explored all possible realms of ideas that are potentially feasible? Have we explored outside of our industry, for example? The third uncertainty that innovators face is finding the most viable business model for their innovation. And we mean by business model 4 components. What's your value proposition? How do you create value? How will you deliver the value? And how will you capture value in terms of monetization? So do we have a viable business model for our innovations to succeed? The fourth uncertainty surrounds estimating the likelihood of acceptance of the product or services by stakeholders. All other innovation challenges, such as reliability of the solution, robustness of the solution, sustainability of the solution, etc., are all irrelevant if we don't have good answers to the 4 uncertainties discussed here. Since its arrival, most companies have adopted a version of the phase gate process for their product development. Unfortunately, phase gate process is not the best antidote to all of those innovation challenges that I described earlier. The 4 uncertainties are really uncertainties in the sense that there are lots of assumptions behind for all of those 4 items. While the rigor, quality, and linear sequencing of the phases and gates ensure predictability, repeatability, quality, and scalability of the product development process, more and more companies are discovering that it's not the best approach to uncover the 4 uncertainties that we discussed. To solve these uncertainties, exemplar companies have utilized agile sprints approach to making progress. Design thinking, lean startup, rapid innovation, rapid prototyping have all embraced an iterative agile sprints approach to convert assumptions into knowledge. Well, this brings us to a dilemma. Should organizations be using agile sprints approach to product development or a rigorous phase gate approach that we show here to the product development? Well, to sort this dilemma out, we place innovation challenges into two categories, and they're described in our next slide. The first set of challenges, we put them under a category called front end of innovation. So as mentioned, here are the four major uncertainties. If we cannot solve these four uncertainties, you have no chance of success at your innovation. Do we know what are the customers' unmet need? Do we have the best feasible ideas? Do we have a viable business model? And what's the likelihood of adoption? The only way we can uncover these uncertainties, things we know that we don't know, and things we know we don't even know that we don't know, is through iterative process that will take you to many detours and intelligent failing forwards. Iterative process, the best way to manage them is through the agile sprints approach that's actually borrowed from software development. So we solve this using the iterative approach to creating what we call an MVP. What's an MVP? A minimum viable product, terminology or a concept borrowed from lean startup. So we decouple the product development with the front end of innovation, utilizing design thinking, lean startup sprints. Once we have reached our first base with these foundational uncertainties resolved, we are now faced with a second challenge that we call the back end of design. In this domain, we turn our design into best-in-class predictable design that is flawless, customer-focused from the very first day it is launched. We make sure that our solutions are tied to customers' expectations of the solution. We make sure that it is designed for X, and the X stands for all kinds of abilities. Its manufacturability, reliability, durability, robustness, sustainability, etc. So the design for X concepts are the best implemented using the rigorous stage gate process. It's linear, it's resource consuming, but it enables the product development to get done right first time. On the other hand, the left side, our goal is not to get it done right first time. We want to make sure that we have developed the research, we have completed the research, we've developed the functions, all in iterative fashion where we are allowed to make mistakes and fail fast and fail cheap. So put these two concepts together, we have an illustration. So the illustration shows that your product development, as long as you have any one of those four uncertainties, you should use the design thinking sprints approach, an iterative approach to uncover and resolve the four uncertainties. Once we have done that, we can then follow it up with the rigorous phase gate process to make our product development scalable, repeatable, and predictable. So this is in a sense that we propose, and we have been using this approach with many of our clients successfully. So it's not one or the other. We think that we can embrace the sprints agile approach to conduct to resolve the uncertainties and then finish up the product development with the help of the phase gate process. So in summary, we like to highlight the 5 key points that we brought out. The first is the product and service life cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. The second is COVID-19 has accelerated the trends in product development, such as virtual collaboration, speed, agility, making our product development resilient to supply chain risks. We also noticed that the phase gate approach is actually very reliable and it transcends all industries. Jim also discussed how digital capabilities can decrease the cost and lower the risk and increase visibility in our product development process. Last, we showed you that the iterative process is best suited for the discovery and the invention, whereas the phase gate process is best suited for productization, bringing the best-in-class products to the market in a flawless manner.
This is a list of some of our future topics that you see there on the list. If there is a particular topic that you would like to see more of, please feel free to email us at info@consultingeig.com. We thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you found this beneficial, and feel free to reach out to Phil, Mark, and myself if you have any questions. We would love to talk to you. And that's about all I have. Mark and Phil, do you have any closing comments?
No, just thanks for everybody, and see you next time.